Welcome to the Awareness Space, the mental and emotional health podcast, exploring human experience. I'm Owen Morgan, a wellbeing advocate, former massage therapist and wellness author. I have interviewed hundreds of people over the last 4 years on all things health and wellness. After multiple traumas across my lifetime and the effects that they have had, I fell in love with what it is to be a human being. As I moved along my healing journey, I found myself becoming more self-aware of my own experiences, triggers, and survival responses. This changed my life for the better. This podcast explores what self-awareness is and how we can use it to heal, transform, and live a life more fully. With expert guests, health advocates, and people with stories, we dive into what it is to be human. Join our ever-growing community every Sunday and Wednesday evening for all things health, wellness, and transformative awareness. We also have panel show podcast episodes every 4 weeks where our awareness-based listeners and community can ask questions to my guests. All this alongside our wellbeing videos on YouTube and my Awareness 5 Way of Life techniques. You can find the podcast on YouTube, Podbean, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Visit us at www.theawarenesspace.com. Right, it's time for today's show. Welcome to the Awareness Space podcast, everyone. As always, I will start with my intention for this episode and podcast as a whole. When we become aware of what's going on for us in this moment and doing so with compassion, safety, and non-judgment, we can begin to heal. But guess what? Awareness isn't enough. Daily practices, well-being support from another, and resources to grow within are very much needed. That's what I seek out to discover via this podcast. All we have is this moment, and how can we seek to best know how to engage with it for a sense of peace within? So I'm really excited today because this is my first interview with a duo. So this is going to be really interesting. I've done panel shows before where I'm hosting and I have guests, but to have a duo on the other side of the screen is really exciting for me, especially as my partner is in the industry too. And we're kind of like a couple on the charge. It's going to be really special. Today, I'm sat down with Charlotte and Jonathan of The Wellness Theory. They help successful men and women to eliminate stress, calm a racing mind, feel in control of emotions, build a healthier future, and live a stress-free life. Most importantly, that lasts. They are also fellow podcasters, and it's always really good fun to sit down with fellow podcasters, that's for sure. Welcome to the show, Charlotte and Jonathan. How are you today?
We're all great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us on. It's been absolutely a privilege.
Yeah, we're super excited to be on, especially because we've been listening to your podcast all about awareness, and it's so aligned with what it is we do as well. So it's going to be a really cool conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much. I thought it was really going to be aligned with kind of what you guys are doing with your work and the background in helping people with stress, and also your amazing podcast. So I thought it would be a nice mix. I thought I'd give you a little message and see if you'll be up for it. And I'm really glad that you said yes, because we have covered stress in and out throughout the series so far, and I think this is episode 22. But today we can really deep dive into it because I think it's such a common thing that so many go through. There's a lot of resonance going to be happening here today. So I'm really excited to dive into that. But before we do that, how was crazy 2020 for you with everything with COVID? I see that you do a lot of stuff online, which is really useful, but how has it been for you professionally and in business, this crazy old time in history?
Well, obviously 2020 for us was, like for a lot of people, it was challenging, but it has taught us a lot. It's really opened up a lot of different opportunities and different paths for us to kind of grow and adapt, which is awesome. And it was definitely a kind of a quick turnaround to what we were doing. It was like, oh, this has happened. What do we do? Let's do this. And basically we just went for it. And it did literally teach us a steep learning curve in 2020, definitely.
Yeah, so for those obviously that don't know us, we was based in the UAE for the last 7 years. And in 2020, we was planning to leave at the end of the year and going back to the UK before relocating elsewhere. And obviously when the pandemic hit, it was like, okay, so let's accelerate those plans drastically. We had a fitness education business over in Dubai as well. So we was, having to wrap that up as much as we could by delivering the training online, even though it's very practical based as well, but we managed to pull that off. So that was a good learning. It was a lot of fun. And then we ended up transitioning back to the UK in August. And yeah, we have been learning to surrender ever since, in that transition of kind of coming back to old environments. And originally it was supposed to be for a short period of time, and now we're here for a bit longer. So we're just leaning into it and doing our best to enjoy it and learn from it. And perspective's been everything, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's been really interesting because, like you say, it caused us to push the button earlier than we may have planned. But I find that so often, so many of us can kind of procrastinate a little bit. So I think the only good thing about what COVID may have brought to us is stopping that procrastination, because we just don't have time to do that. We've got to go for it. And I think the online side of any entrepreneur business these days is vital to really, really push and get an audience. You have to be online. You have to be doing it consistently and persistently. So I think it's allowed a lot of us to realize, we just got to go for it. We just got to get out there, get online, adapt our business models, because actually in the long run, it's going to give us access to way more clients. So I think it's been a real opportunity for us, I think, all to push ourselves entrepreneurs, you think?
Yeah, we fortunately, our plan was being online anyway. So alongside our fitness education business, we've also been coaching in wellness, in stress, in just helping people perform at their highest levels, and a big part of that was shifting online. We already launched our online courses as well, so we're very fortunate, even with everything that's happened in 2020, that we was able to at least be a bit of a step ahead as well. But you're absolutely right, we did that acceleration. There was no space for procrastination whatsoever.
No, it definitely was like we just had to take action straight away. We had to get everything done in a fraction of the time frame that we originally set ourselves. So it was a good experience as well. It taught us a lot, and it's really kind of helped us to become aware of how much we could actually get done in such a short space of time as well.
Yeah, it is surprising, isn't it, when you think about people say, I don't have time, but sometimes it's just about being clever with your time and finding different ways to make the process a little bit easier. And I've certainly learned that through this journey of podcasting. And it's not a quick thing. You have to literally do the hours. You have to sit there and have conversations about how you edit, how you prep, how you do marketing. You just have to find ways to sort of adapt and make more sense. And COVID definitely allowed a lot of us more time. It certainly did for me. I had like every day, I wasn't in work. So it allowed more of that. And now I'm back into full-time work. Like, oh my God, how can I do both? But I learned a lot of tools along the way. And I think that's probably a testament to what we're going to be talking about today anyway, is that learning ways to understand what you can best do for yourself to help yourself in the process, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%, definitely.
Amazing. So before we move into question one and then a bit about your story and your work, can I just ask you, were you in this industry before you met, or is it something that manifested while you were together?
Yes, we were in this industry before we met. We knew each other on a work setting before, but in the UK. So we both used to work for big corporate fitness chains, and I've been in the industry for about 20 years myself. You're about 16? About now 16 years. So we've been a long time before we actually met as well. It's just us coming together, just creating a new connection into that world, is going deeper into the whole the wellness side of it, the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional.
It's interesting, because everyone always asks us that question. They're curious. They're like, did we meet kind of on the job, as it were, and working together? And it's yeah, that's kind of how we met, but we didn't get on initially, because we hadn't done a lot of that inner work that was needed. And it took quite a while for us to actually then work on ourselves and then be in a place where we could be together as a couple, let alone then work together as business partners as well. It's been a journey.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. Definitely, we're completely on opposite sides of the spectrum. When we first started working together or anything like that, it did take a while to start to do that work and connect everything together. But it was, things happen when they're meant to happen, and that's what we're a big believer in, is that it wasn't the right time, certain things to happen, and then when it was, everything just kind of fell in place.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find being in this industry and, being around people a lot who are in the same thing as you, and you kind of have similar mindsets and that kind of stuff, that it lends itself to potential, connection. And I know that as you do this work, you kind of discover more and more, don't you, about human experience, whether it be fitness or physical stuff or mind-body connection, all this kind of thing. And I think you grow as a person too, don't you? And I've noticed that, with me and my partner, it's been amazing because we're always growing, we're always learning. But because we're doing it together, it's not like we're diverting off in different directions, which so often happens in relationships. One grows, one doesn't, isn't it? And one gets left behind. And what I really like about this is once you open up the door to well-being and having a sense of what it is to be well, it's such a lovely journey, I think, to share, isn't it?
It really is. One of the things that we found is when we was resisting our own stuff, like you said, when you open the door, it all fits together wonderfully and you get to share that with somebody else. But if you're still resisting things that are happening inside, which we both were when we first met, don't get me wrong, we've done a heck of a lot of work on ourselves already. But then when you meet somebody and there is a bit more depth there, they then become a bit of a reflection on your own experience, and we end up projecting things, and then it's, well, there's something else I need to learn about myself, and that's just continued to evolve, but in a very healthy way. And I think sharing it with somebody is very special. But one thing that I really want to add, because it's just something that I've noticed with a lot of people who aren't sharing their wellness journey with other people, is they feel like they have to have somebody in order to share that. And I kind of want to debunk that right off the bat, if there is anybody listening and thinking like that, because it's not necessary. But if there's anything that we've learned, is that we got to be good on our own before we can come together and share that with somebody else as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think having that sense of self-regulation and knowing what you need and using the power of self-awareness, of course, to get us there is really important, because I think it's so easy to become codependent and really need those people to lift us up and care for us, even trigger us as well, of course. And it's really important I think the best way to work with your triggers is to really explore what it is about you that's leading you into those situations to be triggered. I'm sure we'll dive into all of this today, but I just wanted to ask you that question, because I knew everybody asks you, but why would I be any different? I've got to ask you too, which is really important. And briefly before we move on, just because, especially for you, Jonathan, you mentioned that you were at the high end of in fitness chains and stuff. And I was a PT, that's how my journey began. And I was looking to work with big gym chains and all that kind of stuff. And it just didn't feel right to me. I was going into those environments, but this doesn't feel right intuitively for me. So I went it alone, and it was a one hard slog, I tell you that, running your own business as a PT straight off the bat. I mean, what was your experiences at the high end? Did you find a way of surviving in that environment?
For me, like, I started off as a fitness instructor, then went into at the age of 16, went into personal training. And I always found that I started literally from scratch as a personal trainer about 4 different times in the first 10 years, kind of like moving from one place to another. And I always found it quite easy to build up a business. But like you said, there's always something missing there. But I didn't realize at the time. I was basically just focusing on, okay, everything I need, I know. I don't need to learn anymore. I don't need to know anymore. I know it. So I just got to keep basically slogging and pushing and forcing through a solution until something sticks, without actually stepping back and thinking there actually is more, killing someone in the gym or telling them to eat healthier, and growing that business. I think a lot of people base it on trust. So a lot of people obviously a lot of my clients had a lot of trust in me, and I delivered results on a very superficial level to all clients, and that's what they wanted at the time, or they thought they wanted, but they always kept slipping back. And it took me a while as a personal trainer to realize that, like you said, there was definitely something missing, but it took me a long time to actually take a step back and become aware of that and actually do something about it. At that time, I was very ego driven. So I know everything. I don't need to learn anymore. I'm at that point in my career now where I think, as a personal trainer, I don't need anyone's help. Like, I can do everything on my own. But no, it definitely does not work like that. I caused myself a lot of suffering, and it was a lot of hard slogging to keep trying to grow, even just by a little bit.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, because in my journey with it too, is that you're trained in that kind of way of you know your stuff, on conceptually you know exactly what to do. But the more you spend time with clients, you start to see what's blocking them, maybe the emotional connections to things, and how until you start to shift that and work through some of those things, it's really hard to maintain a daily practice, be it meditation or fitness really. And it's difficult, I think, in those environments, and in gym environments, in those structured environments where you're working for another brand, to be able to tap into those things without crossing the line of the company's way of doing it. I think what lends itself well to being self-employed and going in that direction is that you can open up those conversations and build a team of coaches and counselors or whatever you may need to help you help the client even more. And that's something that I certainly was grateful for. And for you, Charlotte, how was it for you? Were you working too in chains?
Yeah, very, very similar to what John. I started as a fitness instructor and then went into personal training. I then moved into the fitness management side of things. And yeah, I definitely experienced the same things that you guys have just mentioned there, was like noticing, hey, people want to get these quick results usually for something short term. Usually, more often than not, it's because there's a wedding coming up or a holiday coming up, that kind of thing. And they would get fantastic results from mainly focusing on the nutrition and exercise, because when you're in a corporate fitness chain, that is the main focus. And then when I moved into fitness management, one of the reasons and one of the things that motivated me the most is because we knew there was something else there. You know, it's about having a very different approach, making sure that you're opening up your clients and asking them the right questions so that you can help them create lasting change. And interestingly, obviously now with Wellness Theory, all we're talking about is lasting change. But back then, you know, we were still pretty fresh. I was still very fresh as a manager. And I was really, really focused on, okay, how can we really make a difference to people's lives, not just their fitness results? And it was from there where I found my love of really coaching other trainers to be able to do that with their clients. And then from there, that escalated into more senior level management. You know, got to the point where working over in the Middle East was responsible on a national level for a lot of clubs in the GCC. And that obviously had its own different pressures and different stresses, from, you know, leading other people, from keeping your own health and wellness going, your own mental health going in the best ways possible, and also still trying to have an impact at the same time to still that person that wants to lose weight for a wedding or a holiday. So it's like almost the gap got bigger from where I was, from where the people were that we was really, really trying to help. But with all of those like little changes and trainings and chain reactions that happen throughout that leadership, we were then able to affect those individuals. And that's, I think, the thing that kind of makes us do what we do now, is we saw, okay, this is how we can put it together. And then that was when it was time for us to kind of go out on our own with Wellness Theory, wasn't it? Yeah,
definitely. Like for me, it took me a lot longer to come to that realization than Charlotte did. Like I got to a point where I had clients who were not getting any more results, and I was just thinking, why was that happening? Or even just when I was in managerial position, I would just kept blaming them for not doing the work, not thinking that actually there's a deeper reason why these results are not coming. And it took me still a while longer at that point to realize that there was like an emotional, like even a spiritual side to that was blocking people from achieving what they wanted to. It wasn't just physical. And then when I realized that, it does change the game massively when it comes to people's results, really. And that's when things start to become much easier and started to connect. And that's why kind of what we do now is not just focusing on, okay, do this exercise, eat this food, and you're going to get the result. It's now, okay, how can we connect all areas of wellness to become more balanced, so you can create that lasting change, so you can get the result you want and keep it for all the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing all that with me, because it just resonates so much with some of the things I've been involved in. And it's kind of these environments that we put ourselves in can allow us to grow. And I always think like the best way to grow is just to put yourself in new situations and new places that allow you to see more about who you are and what you want. I think it's much easier to find out who you are by putting yourselves in different situations, because otherwise it's easy to stay in your bubble and think that's who you are meant to be. So I think it's a big message there, and your journey is so amazing because it's obviously, as we know, in the cheesiest way possible, has led to you where you are today. And it's not just cheesy, it's just life, right? That's how it looks. You know, all of the steps that we take have got us here, which is amazing. Now, I could probably talk to you guys all day about the industry. So let's focus on other topics for today. So my question to you is the same question that everybody gets on my show. So of course you can take turns. So what does self-awareness mean to you, and how do you keep a sense of present moment awareness in your life? So whoever wants to start, over to you.
I'll start with that one. Well, self-awareness to me is all about kind of trusting in myself, is trusting in my own ability to figure things out. Is like just understanding that my mind and body know exactly what they need to do to achieve the life I want. I just need to basically listen and trust the process, as opposed to trusting all the noise that is around me. And when I actually start to listen to myself and become aware of what's happening, mind and body, that's when things start to change for me. I stopped getting like angry and irritated all the time. I start to trust that I can actually figure out what I need to do and direct myself into the kind of the path that I actually want. And one thing that helped massively for me was breathwork meditations. I've tried different various styles of meditation as well, but I find breathwork to be the most effective for me. It helps me to bring myself back into the present and focus on my breath instead of thinking about what's happening in the past, what's happening in the future. It just bring myself back into the here and now. And that's obviously by kind of bringing myself into that present moment, that really helps to create the future I want. And I think that's the most important thing people need to realize, is stop focusing on, have your 5-10 year goal, but stop thinking about, if this happens, this is going to happen. If this happens, this is going to happen. And start thinking of actually living the future you want right now in the present. And by bringing your awareness back to that present, and for me, it's through breath work, through just kind of acknowledging where my thoughts are going. Well, I know some days that I kind of know that my thoughts are going a lot into the future. Start to think, when something happens, we can do this, and we can go here, or we can do that, or this is going to happen. And then I think, okay, no, I can't keep living in that state of in that future. I've got to bring myself back, and that's when I kind of bring my thoughts back to the present, and then just focus on what I'm doing now, and start to actually just be in the moment and live in that present moment. Actually, live how I want to live in the future. If that makes sense. So if I want to be somewhere, I want to feel a certain way, I want to do it, be a certain person, I've got to be that right now in that moment. And breath work helps me massively with that one, to bring myself back into the present moment. Another little tool I use is mindful movement. So when I do any type of movement, where it's walking, running, exercising, again, the same thing. I just bring my focus, my mind, and my breath back into exactly what I'm doing, trying to just sensate and experience everything that's happening in that moment, instead of thinking about the end result or how I'm going to feel tomorrow. It's just focusing on the sensation and the feeling in that moment. That's what those two things really help. The breath and the mindful movement help to keep me focused and aware of exactly what's happening in the present.
That's amazing. Thank you. I love that combination too. Breath is something that we're always, generally going to have, obviously, until we pass. So, I mean, it's the greatest anchor we can ever tap into. It's always there for us. And probably one of the best regulators too of anything. And like you said, any form of movement with mindful awareness is so powerful, because so often we can get into generic moving patterns too, and the way we move, and actually bring that awareness can change. It would change the game for me anyway, as soon as I started doing that. And it's what I told every massage client after sessions, you can stretch all day and think about life as you're doing it, but how about you start moving your limbs in a very slow manner and bringing beautiful awareness to how it's moving, and really connect to the sensations that you're feeling. And that, for my clients, changed everything. They were coming back to me, oh my God, I've been stretching for years and it's not working. I started doing these mindful movements, and in a couple of weeks I feel so much better. And I'm like, oh my God, why didn't they show me this in my training? But this is going back to what we talked about earlier, isn't it? They only show you so much. And for you, Charlotte, how does that look like? Is it similar, different?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely similar in what John said about sensating and coming back to your centre. For me, self-awareness is more being aware of the awareness itself. So it's one thing to be able to catch yourself, like John said there, like your thoughts are wandering and you bring yourself back to now. I think that's a beautiful thing. But then when we can even step out of that and observe all of that, it really helps us to zoom out and keep an incredible perspective, not only on our own lives and situations, but collectively as well. I think it certainly helps me to be a lot more open-minded. It helps me to be able to hold space for what other people are going through as well. And obviously as a coach, that's crazy important. So that's something that's really, really helped, is just focusing on that. Still being here, still being totally present, but at the same time observing it from afar. And I always advise anybody that's struggling to be in the present is to really just zoom out, like pretend that you literally was like on the moon looking at Earth, like zoom all the way out, get a bit of perspective, and then come back to yourself through breath, through journaling something I'm so passionate about. It's helped me drastically just to be able to articulate my thoughts, to be able to be aware of my own awareness. It's helped me to be able to do that. But essentially, to echo what John said there perfectly, is that it's about coming back to your center, sensating, because that's what we're here experiencing life as. That's why we have access to these senses, so that we can actually be in the present and enjoy them.
Yeah, it's a really lovely message too, because Charlotte, I know exactly what you said there, because it's so important to be kind of like this compassionate witness of your experience, which is this kind of element of looking at your reaction to your reaction. So it's quite easy for us to go, oh, I realized that I just snapped at that person, and then say to yourself, oh, well, that's not great, is it? So you start to judge that and creating this inner dialogue, which actually is probably going to get you in more of a mess in the long run. But then you step back again and go, isn't it interesting how I judge myself for behaving that way? Rather than saying it's natural to react that way, because we're essentially animals that have fight and flight systems. And if we drop into that, we are probably either going to get aggressive or obviously want to run away. So when you become aware of the reaction to your reaction, you then get this lovely sort of loop system of being able to stay just, I think, regulated, really, to see these things. It's okay to be triggered, but how can you best step out of that just afterwards? I'm not expecting you to never be triggered again. That would be ridiculous. But you can start to change your relationship with the aftermath of a trigger and show yourself compassion and love and say, it's okay, I've got you, especially if it's your inner child getting triggered, and show your child some love. So yeah, Charlotte, what are your thoughts on that? Am I kind of in the same realm of what you were saying there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I like you said, we're going to get triggered. We're human beings, and I think everybody's always got more work to do on some level, wherever somebody's at. But when you're able to be aware of the awareness, you're able to almost override those natural instincts a little bit, and that's where triggers start to dissipate, and we can actually start to dissolve some of those triggers because we're so aware. When we take those deeper learnings, then we actually can stop reacting in the same way as what we have before. Next time we won't catch it after, we catch it just before that we're going to react to something. And we almost like build more of a time gap between that reaction and that situation, so you end up being more proactive than reactive. And that comes again back to having that trust that John said about trusting your subconscious then as well, trusting that you have got this. Yeah, you've experienced this trigger once, twice, 3 times, 100 times, but at some point when you're observing the awareness, you get to really learn it and like on a much deeper level, like you get it if you like. And then from that space you then get to operate, and you can then override that in future. But it takes time. It's not something that just happens overnight, and it's not like a hack that is like, okay, just journal and do breath work and it's done. It's taken years to even be aware of that awareness, let alone being able to actually like intervene and actually be able to respond differently to it.
Yeah, totally. And it's, you know, what I've often said in other shows about being slow, steady and safe in your daily practice journey, because it does take time. And any meditation teacher out there worth their gold will say that it just takes time. There's no pressure on how long, but you just got to start today. Back to what Jonathan was saying about any moment that you're in will impact your future. Whatever you do today can be the shape of what you want to become. So if you want to become more of this or more of that, all you got to do is start today by doing a couple of minutes of it and just building from there, because there'll be resistance. Your behavioral patterns will want to resist these things. But so much of this is about having that sense of steadiness and regulation. So these triggers can become less impactful if we feel more steady. And to feel more steady, we've got to take care of ourselves on a daily basis and do these practices. And obviously we'll talk a lot more about this later on with stress anyway, because stress will be the one thing that stops you feeling steady. So we'll dive into all of those things. I'm really excited to talk about that. Cover quite a bit of your career story and where you've been and developments and personal transformation you've had. But is there anything that you've either have been through emotionally, physically, mentally that have really impacted you, be it stress or burnout or anything really in your experience that's affected you? So over to you guys.
Well, for me, my pretty much whole life, starting in the fitness world, health and fitness, has pretty much been stressed and living in a state of anger, aggression, tiredness for ages, and not actually knowing why and becoming aware of it. My stress levels are always through the roof. Pretty much everything triggered me for probably over a decade. And this was pretty much from the age, I think about age of 16 to about 30. I kind of lived in that state of constant stress where I was just getting angry or snapping at people, blaming everyone around me. And I obviously, those kind of patterns I took from childhood as well. So it's kind of what I learned from childhood as I was growing up. And I thought that was how I was meant to manage people. That's how I was meant to behave. That's how things were done. And obviously the result of that, I kind of lived a lot of years in pain, tired all the time, just being nicknamed the Hulk pretty much most of the time. So I would be more Hulk than Bruce Banner, shall we say. So that would come out all the time. And like for me is when that moment of realization, that awareness came in, and when what I was doing, I was thinking there must be an easier way. Surely it shouldn't be this hard to just live and work and do things. Like it shouldn't require this much suffering or any suffering at all. And when I started to become more aware of what I was doing and then started to slow things down and just focus, I'd say pretty much a lot of the triggers I had and a lot of those feelings, they just literally went. So obviously, I still have a few things now that I know trigger me every now and again, but I'm aware of them. It's just I'm more aware now of why I was acting that way, and there was no need for it. I got to the point where I was experiencing chronic back pain for 4 years. So it was that kind of last 4 years up until the age like 26 to 30. I had chronic back pain in the middle of my spine between my shoulder blades, and I had it to the point some days it would get so bad where I would get massive headaches and it would actually blur my vision. I'd done x-rays, scans, I had injections in my spine, I'd done physio, I'd done all sorts of different things. Nothing really worked. Some things had a short-term fix, but nothing really worked. It was only until I started to actually listen to what my body was telling me and started to sort of do the work I needed to do, which is, again, slow things down, bring myself back to my center, then that pain started to go. Like my body started to react in a more favorable way. So my pain went, my stress levels kind of completely disappeared. And now most people are shocked when I tell them how angry I used to be. They can't see it because I very rarely get angry or stressed anymore. It's very, very. I can't even remember the last time I got stressed.
I don't remember the last time.
Either. But yeah, I just remember living with that for so long. And it was my own doing. I caused my own suffering, basically, and I just wasn't aware of it at the time. When I did become aware of it, it changed, like literally flipped on its head, and I started to become a lot more calmer, more relaxed. And that was a very nice feeling. I remember that what Charlotte said earlier about when before we first got together, we had a lot of work to do, and I was one of those people where I thought I needed someone else to complete me. Like I had to be with someone because there was something missing. But when I'd done the work I needed, I realized that I just had to be comfortable with myself. And when I became comfortable with myself and comfortable being on my own, that's when I started to realize, okay, yeah, I don't need external things to make me happy. I don't need external things to calm me down. I've got the tools I need. I just need to become aware and actually practice them every single day.
Yeah, thank you. And so much what really lent itself well towards the end of what you just said there was this kind of sense of so much of what we're looking for is actually already here inside us right now, especially stuff like wisdom. People are always, going out there trying to figure out where the wisdom's at. How can I become wise by the time I'm 70? It's like, you do know there's an innate wisdom within you if you listen and you tune in and you really connect to that. And that really lends itself well to that. And what's really powerful about your story is so many people have been where you've been with that level of anger and stress that's learned from childhood, that pattern. So many people don't get that opportunity to come out the other side. They never engage in the awareness that they need and will people spend the rest of their life in that kind of state, which is just sad, really, because I really want people to be able to have the opportunity to experience this really beautiful thing called life without feeling burdened within our kind of own prison of fight and flight and shutdown states. And I'm just really happy for you that you were able to have had a chance to have broken through that. And was it something, just briefly, was it a light bulb moment? Was it someone said something? What was it that transitioned you from being in this pattern behavior that you're unaware of to wanting to change that?
Well, I pretty much lived most of my life, my career, modeling people around me. And to be honest, I never had the best models to model. So it's when I actually started working, when Charlotte first came over to the Middle East and we started working together. I started seeing her do things in a different way that I was doing things and get a quicker result. And I was going, okay, why is that happening? As it took me 11 months to get here, it took her like 2 months to get the same result. As what's going on there? And then that's when I started to kind of start thinking differently about things. I started reading different books that people would give me on anything to do with psychology, to do with emotions. And I think the thing that tipped it for me is I'm a big fan of Robin Sharma. So you heard of Robin Sharma, so a big leadership expert, motivation guy. And I went on one of his 5-day intensive programs. And during that time, the whole concept of it is of being like a leader without a title, is taking like personal responsibility and just like you have control over everything. And I can't pinpoint a moment in that, but I mean, by the end of the 5 days, it was like everything that was rumbling around in my head, all this chaos that was going on, like everything that wasn't needed kind of just disappeared, and everything else that was needed stayed and just became aligned with what I wanted. And it just felt very free. Like it was like a complete sense of freedom, both physically and emotionally. I've never experienced that sense of freedom before that. It was very, what's the word? Profound. Yes, very profound.
Oh, that's wonderful. And such a testament to what we said earlier on about new environments, new people, put yourself out there and just give it a try, because they could let you see things differently. You can see the world through different eyes. You go, oh, okay, that's interesting. I always think it's so easy to stay in our little bubbles of community and not be around new people. I've certainly learned that on my journey. Every interview I do, I get to meet a new human being that can allow me to see things differently. And it makes you more rounded, more whole, I think. And even going and working in this new, this current job that I'm in at the moment, a complete different environment, people who aren't into wellness, fascinating to spend time with them where I used to be and see how far I've come. So you can actually reflect through that. So yeah, thank you, Jonathan. That was so powerful. And for you, Charlotte, how's life looked? Basically, it's a small question.
How's life looked? Okay, so yeah, like it's similar to John, really. It was lack of awareness, and it's so ironic given the interview we're doing with you now is all about awareness, and it's just something that was just totally missing for me. And on a whole, I had a relatively good upbringing. There was definitely some traumatic times throughout my upbringing, but I kind of felt like I, rolled with it, dealt with it, went with the flow, and all of a sudden I had a bit of a wake-up call as to, you didn't really deal with those things, and we're going to keep on putting some red flags up until you pay attention, is essentially kind of the little voice that I imagine was in my head at the time, that was trying to help me at the same time, on the other flip side of it, hindering me also. So I was basically living on autopilot, just totally really unaware and disconnected to how I really felt about things. Like on the surface level, everything's good, smiling, laughing, get on well with people. There was no nothing tragic almost happened at a pivotal moment, if you like. And often we hear stories of people that are, they have a near-death experience and all of a sudden they turn their lives around. And for me, it wasn't. It was almost like a very slow and steady burn that was going on, kind of in a part of myself I wasn't even aware of. And some of those red flags that I mentioned was I started emotionally eating. And again, I was doing it mindlessly. I didn't even really know noticed that I was emotionally eating, given the fact that I was still working predominantly in the fitness space and I was training all the time. I thought I was taking care of myself, and I was to a very low level, I would say, to be honest, now in hindsight, because I was neglecting all these other areas of my health, meaning emotional, mental and spiritual. And yeah, it really got to the point where, you know, behind closed doors, I was struggling. You know, my thoughts were running riot in my head, having all sorts of different ideas of suicide, of how things could be coming across when the door is open and I am around people. And it was a really uncomfortable place to be, because for me, all of a sudden, I was almost having a bit of an identity crisis as well. And, you know, if anybody was looking from the outside, they would have been like, no, she knows who she is. She knows what she wants. She's going for it. She's getting it. Like John just said there, like when we started to work together, he saw that I was getting results maybe in a smaller period of time with other people. But behind the scenes for me, that it was all kind of unfolding. It was like a house of cards falling down. And it scared me, in all honesty. It really, really scared me. I was like, whoa, who is this? Why is this kind of coming up for me? And it was only at that point I was like, yeah, I need to get some help. I need to figure out what's going on here. And that's what really opened that door to all these other elements of wellness that we now talk about all day, every day. And for me, that was working with a coach. It was working with somebody that understood what was going on within me. It was about somebody helping me to actually realize that my thoughts are just thoughts. That's all they are. Right? They're nothing that I have to believe in. They're nothing that are, you know, gonna end my life or not end my life. They're things that we choose to buy into, and then there's obviously feelings that are attached to that. So I've had this whole journey of actually trying to associate with myself again, and to be able to actually feel all of the emotions, not just think, okay, cool, everything's fine, and think my emotions. I had to actually start to feel them. And that's when my journey of actually becoming coherent in both heart and mind become the forefront of my journey. And again, it's kind of led us to where we are now.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And one of the most important messages I had in there, I've heard from other guests, is that sometimes we don't have the big, massive traumatic event or the near-death experience. I laugh when you said that, because a big part of my story is I nearly died 5 years ago, and that story is as informed where I am today. But I was like you, before that big moment, I had 10 years of slow, steady burning. And I was getting more and more disassociated. And it's a really important message to anybody that's out there that feels like they're suffering. They don't know why, or should they be? Nothing bad's happened to them. But at the end of the day, the worst thing that happens to us is the worst thing that happens to us. So it may not feel as big as somebody else's, but it's your thing. It's your overwhelm, and it matters, and it's important. And your story is really important there, because I think it can be quite subtle. It's something it was for me. It was very subtle. So I didn't really notice 100% until I look back now and go, oh my God, I had so many coping mechanisms, but they were so subtle and integrated into my high productivity life that I didn't spot it. So building businesses and kind of, you know, doing really well in work and getting promotions, but I was just on my knees, but high functioning. And that is a recipe for burnout, right? When you get those two combinations. And I just want to say thank you for sharing that, because I've heard it before and it's so steady and it's really valuable. So thank you.
You're welcome. I think that's so important what you've just said there, because, you know, it's something that it's almost like we've got so many blind spots. And until we start to look behind the curtain and actually see, okay, well, what are those things that are slowly integrating themselves into our lives, that only then can we do something about it, which brings us again back to awareness. But when we don't have that level of awareness, we are literally just on autopilot, just living life. And like you said quite rightly earlier, it's quite sad when people don't get out of that. And for me, I can see at that point, if I hadn't gone and got help at that point, I can see that I would have been one of those people. I could see that I would have just stayed on that merry-go-round and just going and going and going, you know, enjoying the highs, almost avoiding the lows. And that's pretty much would have been my life. And when I think about that, it's really like scary in a way, because it's like, whoa. Because there's so many people out there that are still struggling, and they don't always know how to articulate it. And that's something that I'm hoping the more we talk about our own journeys, all of us here today, the more people can start to actually be like, oh yeah, do you know what, that could be something that's going on with me. And they can actually start to put those puzzle pieces together, because I think that's when you start to see the full picture of what's possible. And I think that can be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think it's really important to mention too that, like you said, so many people, it can be so subtle that they could live their whole life that way. And actually, they, on some level, have a pretty good life. You know, they have good family units and good friends. And even though they have some coping mechanisms, actually, they get through to the end of their life and they have no regrets. So that's really important to mention too. Sometimes it can be subtle enough that it's so that you can cope with and within your window of tolerance. So that's really key here. And so much of, I think, human experience is littered with desire and longing and, you know, looking to something else or trying to hide ourselves from a pain. And that's normal. It's all totally normal stuff, but it can manifest in the way we eat and the way we move and the way we train, the way we think, you know, the way we talk to people. And when you do start to cultivate this sense of compassionate awareness, you really start to see it and you're like, oh my, I can see what I'm doing now. And it's amazing. I think once you open up those doors, it's very hard to close them again. I could say that. You just want to find out more. When you start learning about yourself, you have curiosity, you're like, oh, tell me more, Owen, tell me more. So I think both of you have fantastic messages in your stories. I want to thank you for sharing that. I'm looking at other questions. I'm like, we got a lot to cover today. So let's dive in. So people talk about stress a lot. It's thrown around all over the place. You know, oh, I'm stressed, or God, I've been so stressed out right now. People just throw the word around with not actually knowing what that looks like. So let's dive in there first. It's the most logical place. So what is stress and what does it do to our body and mind? Nice, subtle question. Over to you.
Stress is... it's an autonomic response in your body. It's something that we all have, we all experience, and it can be good and it cannot be good for you. And the difference is getting people to understand the difference between what's healthy stress and what's unhealthy. Because stress has got, like, you mentioned stress, automatic, everyone thinks bad. It's like it's something that it's not good for you, but it can be good for you if it's obviously used in the right way and become conscious of how you use it. So a lot of people are completely unaware of what is obviously their stress levels, why they're stressed, what are the root causes behind it. And when we do get stressed, for example, if we are learning something new, our cortisol levels rise in our body. That's our stress hormone. And that helps us to actually to learn and to grow. The same when we start a new job, it can be a bit apprehensive, get a little bit nervous. And that's good because, again, it keeps you on your toes. It can help you grow. But when you're going into a meeting at work that you've been in every single week for the last however many years, and before you even go in, you go, oh, this is going to be awful. This person's going to be there, they're going to say this. And then by the end of it, before you even go in, your head's all over the place, you're stressed out to the max, and when you leave, you're exhausted. And that type of stress is unhealthy. That's not good for anyone. So it's just understanding the difference between healthy and unhealthy. So healthy stress helps you to grow and learn. Unhealthy stress basically just sends you into a very unresourceful state. So when you do get stressed, you start kicking in what we call the sympathetic nervous system. So this is the fight or flight response. So when this happens, your goal is obviously to get out of that response as quick as possible. So, for example, if you're in an accident or something happens, your stress rises. When you're in a safe place, your body automatically brings your stress levels back down to a more manageable state. So then you get your parasympathetic system that kicks in, which is your rest and digest state. And your body's constantly balancing these two throughout the day, depending on what scenario you put yourself in and how aware and conscious you are of what you're doing. Majority of people are unconscious of what they're doing. They're not aware of it. So they actually spend probably 80% or more of their day in that fight or flight mode without even realizing it. Through obviously maybe lack of sleep, not eating, poor quality nutrition, stressful day at work. They go to the gym maybe after, they add on more stress to their body in an already stressed state. They go home, they sit in front of a TV thinking, oh, it's time for me to relax now. And then they sit in front of a TV with a glass of wine or their meal, and they're thinking they're relaxing, but internally their body's still like switched on. That stress system is still going. And stress is only meant to be felt and only experienced for a short period of time. So your body's also automatic system is supposed to bring that stress level down and bring you back into a more centered state. But with most people, they don't, because they're not aware of that. They doesn't know how to regulate. And when that happens, they start experiencing obviously many symptoms. It could be from pain, could be just like getting sick more often, could be poor quality of thinking, could lead to obviously aggression, snapping at people, can definitely lead to lack of productivity, creativity. So there's many things that can happen when someone compounds stress and just keeps layering it on and on and on. And it's just important for people to become aware of what stress they're actually experiencing, because stress is a state. It's not you don't feel stressed, you experience stress. And there's other emotions that come into play when it comes to experiencing stress. And once people understand is you are not stressed, you are not a stressed person, you choose to be stressed or not. The initial reaction to stress, your body's autonomic system, that you can't control that. So if something happens to you, that stress response rises, you can't control that. But what you can control is how you react to it. So you can control whether you stay there or you bring it back down again. And that is purely under your control through the way you think, how you breathe, well, just how you become more conscious and aware of your emotional state as well.
Over time, you can obviously train it. You can train your system to be able to endure a little bit more of that stress state that you're talking about, which is that resilience. But at the same time, you need to make sure you're not building too much from the unhealthy or healthy stress combo. You still need to have that awareness which one's which. Otherwise, you're trying to build resilience, and keeping this unhealthy stress in your system. But over the long term, that leads to more chronic issues, whether that is, like John's mentioned there, chronic pain, dis-ease, whether that is like psychological diagnoses and all of those kind of things, because when we start to go down that path, it's a lot harder to then come back from. It's not impossible, but it's easier for you to train that system and to train your body mind to be able to actually cope.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much, guys. I've got like 10,000 questions. And generally I just talk about this all day because I love it. But just to mention to anybody now, when we're talking about the nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic states, anybody that says the show knows that I absolutely love somatic experiencing and polyvagal theory. Anything to do with nervous system, I am there. I want to know. And I just think it's really important for everybody to know at home that all of this is natural. Our nervous system is built in this way so we can survive. If we didn't have this nervous system, we're dead already, because we would not be able to gauge when something's dangerous. So, fight and flight is run away or fight back, right? So why would we need to do that when we're going into a meeting? We shouldn't need to fight back or run away. It's not natural. So it's like, okay, so what is it about this moment that's not making me feel safe? What is dropping me down the autonomic ladder? And I just think, if I encourage anybody before we carry on talking today, if you get a chance, pop on YouTube from a credible source and just learn about the nervous system. Please just go and learn about it. It changes everything. Once you learn it, it empowers you to realize that you do have control in your response. So straight away, guys, learn about the nervous system, please. It's the best homework you could ever do. Right, back to our conversation. What's really powerful about what you're saying there also is if we spend, like you said, these long periods of time in fight or flight or even shutdown state, is, like you said, the long-term impact on your organs. Your digestion isn't working properly. Cognitively, it's much harder to learn. So it's really important, isn't it, to find these ways of cultivating a higher window of tolerance when things happen to us, and this bounce back ability, right? Like you said, to come back to neutral, rest and digest. And I know that's hard, isn't it, when you spend years and years in it? And I did 4 years, blacking out, anxiety, falling over the place. I've been there. It's just terrible. But it just, like we said, slow and steady wins the race. So you just take your time over it. So in your time, in studying the stress side and all the clients that you've worked with, what are your thoughts on the long-term impact of being in fight and flight? Let's just dive into that a little bit more.
I think the one of the most important things, you learn about the nervous system, but also you need to start learning about what is influencing the nervous system, because this ties in with those long-term effects, because the way we are perceiving different situations will affect our long-term relationship with stress. You don't start to understand how we're actually wired from a neuroscience perspective as well, it's going to be very hard for us to be able to intervene and then affect the organs and everything else that you've mentioned in our different systems in our body. We need to start to understand, okay, well, how are we perceiving the world outside of us? When we start to nail that and we start to really understand what's going on inside of our body mind, we actually then are able to intervene and steer it in different directions. Because one of the things, obviously, as I'm sure your listeners are aware, we have this subconscious part of ourselves that is almost running the show, right? It's the doer, right? We're not thinking about our heart beating, or we're not thinking about breathing. It's just happening naturally, automatically. And our subconscious is taking direction from our consciousness. And the more conscious we are, the more aware we are of how we are perceiving information about the world, about other people, and what we're bringing in through our senses, we need to start to focus on, okay, well, how do we start to alter that if it's not serving us, right? So like you use the example of walking into a meeting, you need to be aware of, okay, why are you sensing that? The meeting hasn't happened yet. You're operating from generalizations of past experiences. You might go into that meeting today and it might be incredible. You might get promoted. Maybe you all enjoy a lot of laughter, and actually there's no stress in that meeting today. But yet if you're all going into that meeting with the perception that it's going to be stressful, immediately you're sending ineffective signals to your nervous system, therefore you're getting different results. And it kind of comes back to that whole what comes first, the chicken or the egg. You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter which one comes first. What matters is you're addressing what you can address. For some people, okay, yeah, they might realize that their digestion is off and they've got some gut issues. That might be their entry point to dealing with stress. And that could be almost their fix, if you like, for the long term. But for other people, maybe they're experience overthinking, anxiety. Maybe they are just totally overwhelmed with everything going on in their life. They can't think straight and they've got brain fog every day. That maybe their entry point is likely to be more around the inner dialogue that you mentioned earlier. So it always depends. I know any good coach, or especially in the wellness space, will always answer a question, well, it depends on the person. But essentially, when we're talking about stress, we need to understand how is it manifesting for that individual. And then, okay, what is the most suitable entry point for dealing with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, what came up for me there, we're talking about that, is the sort of feedback loop. So, you're in a certain body state that does affect narrative and the way you think, and then that feeds your body more. So if you end up getting stuck in that loop, which is what I think happens so often, people in workplaces and careers they don't want to be in, is they get stuck in this kind of narrative loop of, oh God, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here, longing for something else. And it's just stressing their body, and their body's like, what's going on? Your brain's like going, what's happening here, everybody? And it's like that, all of this going on. And there's this sort of misalignment, and you get stuck in this feedback loop of nobody able to get out of it, because body's affecting thought is affecting body. And it's like you said, as you said at the beginning of all of this, Charlotte, is being able to step out and look in and go, whoa, I'm seeing this loop unfold right in front of my eyes. How can I start to interject into this loop of love and compassion and see what's really going on and what I really need in this moment to help me with this? And that could look in 10 million different ways. But yeah, this feedback loop thing is something I had to learn very quickly, is that meditation did break that a little bit. But then what would happen in meditation when I first began to do it is that my mind would go even faster. So it was like, right, now there's space. I'm really going to think some stuff through. And I had to let it just flow through and come out the other side. Just let it flow on. Tell you what, it's a tough old thing to grasp when you first do it. But I think in any environment where we're in, this ability to look at that loop from the outside is really important. So yeah, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a practice, isn't it, like anything else, because we need to be able to observe without the layer of judgment. And that's a very tricky thing for somebody to do, especially in the beginning, if you've never done any work on what that narrative is actually saying as well. So being aware of that feedback loop from a place that is completely objective, that's usually the most challenging part. And that's where, like we've said, practice and time comes into play. And like you quite rightly said there, Owen, is letting it flow. Whatever you notice, let it flow. Even if it's like a super positive experience you've noticed on your feedback loop, still let it pass. Don't hang on to it. Let's not cling on to that it becomes part of who we are. Let's actually just start to realize and understand that the more we allow in, we can also allow out. And I think that really then informs the feedback loop, even in itself, without you even really doing anything except observing.
Yeah, totally. And if I could just ask you also about the environmental side, because we talk a lot on the show about, inner resilience and being reflective, but also life's conditional, right? The conditions we're in do have an impact. How much money do we have? And our upbringing was an environment we're in, condition where we live, which street, which area. There's things that we may actively need to change about our conditioning and the environments that we're in that can help us to move away from being in such fight and flight state. So from a conditional standpoint, I guess it is important also to say, okay, what is it about this job? Partly I can deal with the job better, but maybe this job actually isn't what I'm meant to be doing, isn't quite fitting right, and I'm resisting it and creating suffering around that. So what are your thoughts on also being able to make decisions that can better change your environment?
When it comes, I think the first thing for people to understand is that we create our own stress. Like the environment, the people around us, they can't make us stress. It's our reaction to that environment, to those people, that increases our stress levels. And obviously, by making the decision and becoming aware of, obviously, this is no longer serving us, this is no longer serving me in this job or being in this place or this place, and it's time for a change, and not fighting against it. And this is what I think a lot of people do. They tend to fight. Like they're in a job they don't like, and they're not in a kind of resourceful state to see what the solution is. So they just fight through. They fight to the bitter end, so they either get fired or had enough where they basically end up having to quit, but still with no actually clear goal of what they're doing. And I think when people start to, like Charlotte said before, kind of acknowledge, observe it, but also surrender to what's happening, is think, okay, this is not right for me. It's not right for me. I need a change. What's my solution now? And instead of thinking, okay, this isn't right for me because I don't know, this person's annoying me, or my boss is an idiot, or this is going on. It's not my fault, it's their fault. So I need to change my job now because this environment is not suited for me because of the other people around it, or what's happening. And it's important to realize that, okay, if the same thing keeps happening,
exactly.
If you go to a different job, like this is what I used to do. I skipped from gym to gym and expecting a different result. And 6 months later, I'd be in the same loop of anger, irritated, tiredness. And it took me a while to realize that the common theme was me. I was the problem. I needed to become aware and think, okay, this environment is not for me because I am not meant to be in this environment. I need to find an environment. I need to find what is right for me. And that took me about over 10 years to realize.
But the conditions of making those decisions need to be right in the first place. And when I say right, I'm talking about coming from a clean space, because we all make decisions, like John's example there. We've all done that on some level in our own lives, whether it be relationships, whether it be just in simple things throughout the day. We're always making these micro decisions, and all of our decision making is coming from that conditioning, is coming from what we've been exposed to, obviously, throughout our lives. But not only that, it's coming from your deepest beliefs and your deepest core values. And until you're aware of what they are, you're never going to be able to make a conditioned, conscious decision about your future. So making those decisions need to come from a space of understanding the self first. So if anybody's in a situation, and just use the job example because we've thrown it out there already, and they're thinking, I think I've got to leave my job in order to de-stress, just to have that space to do that inner work, to calm down, to be able to come back to their center. It's really important that they take time before they make that decision. If it's possible, take a break. Take some time just to do that inner work for yourself. Almost allow yourself to just press pause on that. You still go to work, still do your thing. If you can't take a vacation, that's okay. But just push pause on the amount of stress you're going to open yourself up to endure, whilst at the same time parallel learning about yourself. You're learning about your own operating system, because that's where your decision making comes from. If you're making decisions based on years of poor quality thinking or trauma or unresolved negative emotion, you're going to do exactly what John just shared there about experiencing the same thing again and again. So it's that inner work that is going to really help to make clearer decisions. There's 3 things we always tell our clients after we're almost like wrapping up coaching, and there's 3 things to do to keep lasting change. One of them is to take action towards what it is you want. The other one is to let go of anything that doesn't serve you. And the third one is to enforce boundaries. Now, if you're doing all of those 3 things from a place of self-awareness, from a place of consciousness, we're then able to make more informed decisions that will actually steer your life in the direction that you actually want it to.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. I love those three. That's amazing. And you're giving me ideas for my coaching career when I go forward. I need to come up with cool lists and options, because that's the way to do it. I do already have one, the Awareness 5, but something came up for me before I forget. I need to say it, which is we tend to have two pathways, right? So we can either change our relationship with the situation we're in or the response that we have, or we can change the situation itself. Sometimes we don't have the luxury of changing the situation. Of course, there's plenty of examples of this. So then you might have to change your relationship, and it's having enough awareness to know which way to go with that, because it's not as simple as just quitting a job. And I didn't realize how many stories I had till I did this podcast. This is another story I've never told, which is that in my 20s, when I was going through hardcore depression and anxiety, but I was high functioning, just like Jonathan said, I was getting stuck in this loop of working in retail, burning myself to the bone, people pleasing, and just really struggling. And I go, I can't do this. I'm going to quit. And this time I'm going to make a change. Have a couple of months off, getting horrendous amounts of debt because I didn't have any work, going back into retail, going straight back in it, thinking it would be different. But then I had also extra debt. So then I had debt and a job that wasn't serving me. I'd quit that one. Honestly, it lasted years. I got in so much debt because I kept quitting jobs and not dealing with either the fact that I had a bad relationship with these environments, or I just needed to be doing something else. And it wasn't until I went down the road of learning about myself and becoming a PT and setting up my own business that all of that started to shift away. And the testament to that story is, I've now had to go into a supermarket. I've had to go into a retail environment because COVID killed my massage business. I couldn't control any of that. But I thought, oh God, what if I do the same thing working in retail again? I have not done that whatsoever. I've never wanted to quit. It's rough. The nights are hard, but I've changed my relationship with it. I feel steady and content in who I am. And I know it's a means to an end, and I'm going to enjoy every second of it by being grateful. That's the difference. I was able to resource myself. And if I had that when I was 20, I probably would have not been as stressed. So there's a little story for you. What do you think?
I think that's bang on. That's perfect, because that just goes to show that when you're operating from a clearer space of knowing who you are, you've clearly done a lot of work on your own journey yourself as well, that you're able to have the skill set as well to be able to change that relationship. But it's very, very inspiring, and I hope other people listening to this really, listen to that and really hear how possible it is.
Totally. It's just even if you have to change the story a little bit, maybe just bring a new narrative in. You've probably got loads of narratives already. Chuck another narrative in. So I'm like, okay, I get to listen to 9 hours worth of podcasts on my shifts. How amazing is that? I get to come out wiser than I went in. That alone keeps me going through the long nights and the rough, heavy lifting. Just being able to listen to podcasts. You just maybe add some new narrative in just to mix it up a bit, have a bit of balance.
Introducing singer-songwriter Riley Scott, a powerful story and truth teller who uses music and song to touch the heart of her listeners. A soulful musician who uses examples of her own healing journey as a source of inspiration for others. Albums that include Beautiful Unfolding and her 2020 release Songbird, featuring the track Scene. And the powerful Move Towards.
But now I can move towards, terrified, but I am sure these old ways aren't working anymore.
Her albums are available for purchase on iTunes or Bandcamp. It's also available for streaming on Spotify and Google Play. Listen to more inspiring music from Riley Scott. We thank Riley for being our official music provider to this podcast. Visit www.rileyscottmusic.ca for more.
But let's just tap into how to become more steady and more resilient in the way we live our lives. So let's just sort of dive in a little bit on how that looks from the clients you've worked with. So I think it's not as simple as it. It's just getting up one day and saying, right, I'm going to meditate for 30 minutes a day and I'm going to become more resilient and steady. Let's do it, because that's not how it works. So what are your thoughts on starting to make the changes? Is it, again, slow and steady? Let's dive in.
But yeah, it's definitely slow and steady. Slow and steady always wins the race. But I think, again, the buzzword of the day, obviously, awareness. It's first of all, you've got to just become aware and just observe. Like, almost actually, if you want to become more steady and more resilient in your way of life, don't try and change anything. Just observe it. That's the first thing. Just observe it and see what you're actually working with, and do your best to observe what's actually happening, not what you think is happening. That's usually the best place to begin, because when we start to understand, well, actually, I thought that this was what my experience was, but actually, if I just tweak this, and that, I'm actually good. And for some people, that's enough, right? That really is enough to kind of see them moving forward on their path as to where they're at. But there obviously comes a point where that's not enough for some people, and it's really important then to delve a little bit deeper. And that's when it is then learning to let some of those things go. It's about understanding those three things that I've mentioned about for lasting change. First of all, you need to get clear on what is it you actually do want then, because we're all so good at talking about what it is we don't want, what we don't want to be experiencing. So becoming aligned and really shifting the direction of our thinking towards what it is we want informs our decisions, it informs our belief systems and how we feel as well. And obviously those feelings then have a direct impact on the body and that stress response that we were talking about earlier. Not only that, you start to learn about what boundaries do you need as a person? What boundaries do you need to be enforcing? What maybe do you need to say that you haven't been saying? And obviously learning to let go of the things that don't serve you has by far been one of the most powerful experiences personally, and from what I see with my clients, when they learn to let go of old operating systems and beliefs and ideas that they have about who they are, it becomes a lot easier to then create space for who it is you do want to be and what it is you do want to believe. And you can then let go of the emotions that are attached to those old ideas. And when we let go of those emotions, that energy that sits within us, well, now we get to re-energize and activate that life force energy that we all have that helps us to really live and experience life. We get to operate on a slightly different level where we're just more open, more aware of how we create reactions in our own lives. But then there's the lifestyle factor element, isn't there?
Definitely. And it's the same, the observation comes exactly the same to every single area of your life. When it's like nutrition, for example, like you need to understand of what you're putting into your body, but also how your body responds. Like, what is your body telling you? And based on what it's telling you, are you giving it what it needs to function optimally? The same with your movements, like how you move, how you exercise. Are you just doing it mindlessly, shoving on some headphones, blurring out some music and just basically zoning out? Or are you paying attention to what's happening in the body? Are you paying attention to every sensation, good or bad, that's happening? And what does that mean? And then same with your sleep. You've got to all think about all these things, observing all these little things, and then thinking, okay, what's my body telling me? What's going on? And then finding out, okay, what do I need to do to give it what it needs? And one thing we do with clients when it comes to like the lifestyle factors is to, first of all, is to get them to understand what it is they're doing on a daily basis and how that's impacting them, their mind and their body. So how are they actually feeling when they do these things? Are they feeling rubbish? Are they feeling tired? Are they feeling lethargic? Are they feeling bloated? Are they feeling sore? If they're feeling all these things, that's a sign the body is telling you that it's not responding in the way it needs to. It's not functioning optimally. Okay, so those are red flags to say that, listen to me, look at what you're doing, start to change things up and find what actually is going to give me the best response possible. So, and that's what we kind of look for when they track their kind of nutrition, sleep, everything really, quality of thinking, their emotions, and how do they respond to what they're doing? Are they getting the result they want? Are they getting it easily? Because it should be easy. Okay, it shouldn't be a struggle. It shouldn't be suffering to get there. If it is, that's you're doing one thing that is not aligned with what your body and mind needs. And it's like there's a conflict there and it's fighting against it.
Yeah, and it's making sure they're on the same page. And when you combine the lifestyle factors and the mental work that I kind of described, that's when you get that sustainable change. so often we see some people have done one, not the other, right? They'll take care of the narrative and the way they're processing their thoughts and their relationships and their communication, and they'll deal with that side of things, but then they won't nurture themselves and nourish their bodies and give themselves the recovery they need to be able to support those new ideas. So coupling them together is where that sweet spot is, and where people can actually start to be more resilient and actually have a steady, consistent way of life.
Definitely, and just understanding that there is no start point and end point. Everything's a circle. It's constant. Every system connects with each other, and every system influences the other system. So, like Charlotte said before, we're to start up in the mind with their quality of thinking. Some people might need to start with their digestive health that affects their quality of thinking. It could be any number of things, and everyone's different. So it's observing and finding out what's going on, and then where's the best possible place to start to bring things back in alignment for that person.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I had loads of points throughout what you were saying there. So I'm going to go with the current point, which is kind of, for example, like when we feel like foggy in mind, we feel a little bit spaced out quite a lot. Like you said, that could be coming from multiple sources. And that's the hardest part, because that could be lack of sleep. It could be, like you said, the way you eat. It could be just stress generally from work. It could be many reasons for that. And I think, like you said previously in the conversation about tuning in and listening. So you said earlier on there, Charlotte, which I don't know if it was kind of like this, but came up for me, which is sometimes it's not about taking everything out and then leaving yourself feeling lonely, bored, all the things that are probably going to trigger you to do either the same things or something different. It's like, what can I bring in? So for me, a big part of my healing journey was bringing things into my life first. Become aware of what was going on and what I need, and bringing in new things, new habits. And then what I started to notice, the other habits just fell away. So rather than put all my attention to getting rid of all of these bad habits, I brought in good habits, which caused the older ones to not be useful anymore to me for survival. So it's kind of finding that balance of, okay, I need to do less of this, maybe eat less of this, or maybe I need to eat more of this. And the more I get into eating more of the good stuff, the old stuff becomes really bland and boring and so then you kind of see that. And just to touch on that is sugar for me. So rather than cutting all the sugar out as such, I'd eat healthier food. So then when I came to eat the sugar, I felt like crap. I was like, well, this is weird. It doesn't usually make me feel like this, but it's because my body was starting to adjust to the good stuff. So you can actually bring things in to counterbalance. So does that kind of make sense?
Yes, for sure. And that is what it's all about, is basically what you did was listen to your body, give it stuff that it enjoyed, and by just kind of how your body likes to respond, it will tell you what it doesn't like, and you just that habit just starts to fall to the wayside because you just don't enjoy it anymore. And I think that's the thing a lot of people is you don't need to cut out all these things from your diet, from your movement, from your life. Like cutting out basically creates a sense of wanting and lack, and it sends people's emotional states and psychological states into, I can't have it, I want it. It's like, so it's like, again, fighting against it is like, you don't need to. The only time we ever cut we'd suggest clients cutting anything out is if it's causing them more harm than good. So if it's causing them a lot of harm, basically, for example, if eating something is causing them so much digestive stress where the amount of inflammation in their gut is causing them, is not allowing their body to digest food correctly and taking nutrients, which affects their sleep, which affects their thoughts, then we'll take it out because it's actually causing them more harm than good. But that's on a rare occasion.
It's more about breaking from it than
cutting it out completely.
It's that shift, isn't it? From let's stop thinking about everything we have to lose, and let's think about what we can actually enjoy and what we can gain from the process.
Yeah, because there's so much of, thank you guys, there's so much of this desire to have a better life, a happier life, a more content life, less stressful, more money. But it's kind of all of that is clinging and reaching and desiring. And it's like, how can we just look at the situation we're in right now, what's serving us, what isn't? And if it's something that isn't serving you, like you said, but not causing so much damage, don't worry about that right now. Like you said, it's how can we start to cultivate this sense of connectedness and safety? Because I find once you start to become safe and socialize and connected, I notice that a lot of my longing and desires start to be less intense. Therefore, I just make better decisions. So maybe working on making yourself feel better and safer is probably a good step forward, because otherwise you're fighting in this loop of like, I know I need to be better, but I'm going to keep trying to cut it out, and it keeps coming back. Oh no, I'm failing. So it's it's really, really tricky. And I think a big part of all of this I wanted to ask you before we move on to the 4-phase human blueprint, very cool name, is to think about this window of tolerance side of things. So how much of an environment can we tolerate before it triggers us into fight and flight, and how that looks? Because I spoke to a chef in the previous episode, my friend Josh, and he was talking about how horrific it can be working in that industry. Stressful, people shouting you from plates, working 12-hour days. You can't really change much about the environment. So how could he build this window of tolerance to cope better with that? On a certain level, we're going to need to build that, because there's some things we can't avoid, like the stress of driving through traffic in the middle of London or whatever. How can we build our window of tolerance so we're not triggered? So when you're working with a client, how does that look? Do you help people to kind of find a more resilience in that kind of ability to tolerate life in a more flowing way?
Yeah, so it's a funny one, because the word tolerance immediately implies that there's something going on that we either disapprove of or that's not aligned with us. So immediately when we use the word tolerance, it can actually trigger us already to be in that stress response. So I think having an understanding of what you're willing to accept and what you're willing not to is important. But from a sense of what you can control, what you can't control, it comes down to, one, being able to observe any moments that you get to almost steal back. So maybe let's imagine that we're all stood in that kitchen and the heat is high because there's food cooking, you've got people in and out, you've got noise, you've got clutter, you've got plates banging, people asking you for things left, right and centre. This is my imagination of what's happening in the kitchen, by the way. John's the cook in our house. Not that it's that hectic.
No, it's not stressful.
But then when we're in that environment, there's nothing stopping you from just pausing in your own tracks, just for even a half a second or a second, to just breathe. Just breathe, come back into your body, reminding yourself of, okay, I'm here, I'm comfortable, this is okay, it's my choice to be here. And actually, I am safe, like you've said. I am coming back to my breath. I've learned that I can trust where I am now, and you could be the eye inside of a storm because you're so resourceful. And it's about grounding that in. Now, for clients, it works differently. It depends on what their presenting issues are. For some people, it can be literally anchoring in certain sensations and center points for people. Some you've heard of people, especially in like public speaking, they'll have like something in their pocket that will kind of anchor them into the moment, that by having that sense of touch will allow them to actually keep their focus in where they are and bring them back down so they are in that more relaxed state. For other people, it is just observing the breath. It is putting some headphones on if you can, obviously not in a busy kitchen, I would imagine, but for some possible, they can have some headphones on, they can step outside for a minute and have a break, and they can start to prepare themselves with transitional moments. So what I mean by transitional moments is if you know you're about to go into a busy dinner service, or you know you're about to go and sit in traffic in the middle of London, you've got a transitional point where you know what's coming, right? You've got an idea of what's potentially there. You can allow yourself to set an intention before that happens. So when you get in the car, you do just touch your steering wheel and just take a breath before you turn on the ignition and say, okay, I'm going to enjoy this drive no matter what happens. This is part of my day. And you've already zoomed out, you're not in it. You've already witnessed it almost happening and how you want to behave or how you want to respond, instead of just allowing yourself to get wrapped up in it all. Because when we get wrapped up and we immerse ourselves in it, we're in the picture, right? We're inside the frame. And when we zoom out, that's the time when we get to see the picture.
Yeah, that's huge. And, what I really liked about that analogy too, and some stuff I've been thinking about, is kind of this being your own champion. So for me, it was about becoming this compassionate witness. Actually became an observer, became very powerful, because I was able to say, Owen, I've always got your back. It's like having a friend with me. It's put the hand on my shoulder and say, you got this. Let's just take a breath. And I've always modeled that for quite a while now, just having this compassionate observer with me. I feel like there's kind of three parts of me. I said this on the previous shows. There's the compassionate observer that we talked about earlier, looking in. There's Owen, the primal animal that's out there, that's having a good time, but also being triggered. And I've got my inner child. Obviously, everything that's happened to me up to this point is affecting my triggers. So also my inner child. So there's my child Owen, there's me today, and this beautiful compassionate observer. And these sort of, what you're talking about, this is idea of like a 3-minute breathing space, which is what I utilize. So if I need to step out and just follow my breath for a few minutes, that's the best inner resource I can use. I can go, cool, right, I'm going to step out a minute to take a break. And it literally, no matter how resourced we think we are, when we go out into that world, we could be affected by it. So we do need to be able to tap into these inner resources. And just quickly as a story, because I realize I'm a storyteller, I should probably write a book or something. But I was at work recently, and I'm human, guys. I'm not like some master of self-awareness. The delivery was late. We had a lot of produce. I thought, I'm never going to finish this in time. I got stressed out. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to finish this. Do I skip my break? What do I do? Is my manager going to be getting annoyed? So even I, not immune to this. And then you've got about 10,000 online shoppers picking stock for customers, right? Just everywhere in the middle of the night. I think that is a recipe for getting a little bit edgy. And I noticed myself getting intensely irritated by the situation about all the shoppers. Get out of my way. I need to finish this. I thought, oh my God, I think I'm getting a bit angry here. This is interesting. This is not like me. I'm sure John can relate to this. You're like, oh God, no, I'm getting angry like I used to. But it was so awesome because my compassionate observer was there, and he's like, hey, Owen, what's happening here? What's going on, man? I'm like, no, I can't believe it. I'm getting angry here. I might even want to kick this box over here. I'm so angry. But no, I stepped out, walked away from the aisle, and just reflected on it and thought, this really isn't that important. In the grand scheme of life, I do not need to get invested in the importance of putting out these potatoes. And I was able to center, and I felt great. And I had a little laugh, had a little chuckle to myself, and had a nice little chat with one of the shoppers. So it's kind of, and when I say shoppers, I mean staff, not customers. I wouldn't get angry with customers. That'd be terrible. But it's just a testament into what we're talking about here is in that moment, I was able to tap into my observer and say, hey, I got you, man. Let's take a break. Is that what you're talking about, Charlotte? Is that a good example?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect example. I mean, it's something that it's actually so simple to do. Like it's almost like some people are out there looking for like this elaborate thing that's going to help them to get the results they want. But if somebody literally just started to practice your example there, they would already start to have shifts on a very, very deep level without even really needing to do anything drastic or elaborate, any other kind of deeper work. If that's the only things they're noting is these things that are happening in the moment, and that's kind of where their stress is manifesting from us, that could be enough for somebody. It's definitely a fantastic entry point for anybody that could be experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I just thought I'd throw some stories out there because, we've all been in these positions. We're humans, we've all had parts of our life that have been really fruitful, other parts that may have affected us a little bit. And, and we're going to keep hopping on about the power of self-awareness, the whole point of this conversation. But I hope these things are useful. Before we move on to the next question, is there anything else you think we haven't mentioned in regards to building more steadiness?
No, I don't think so.
No, I mean, you can go in all different directions, can't you? I think another interesting topic, without making this podcast really long, is how much we really project out onto the world and where our sense can come from that. Because when we start to understand that everything is a lesson, like you there, like wanting to kick the box, there's a lesson in that somewhere, and then we've responded different. You've interrupted that pattern of projection, so the next time you're in that situation, you're less likely to do that. And I think it's a very powerful place for people that want to go a little bit deeper to start thinking about.
Yeah. Actually, what's kind of John from that, one thing I tried to do, I worked into like living in a state of neutrality. So that's really helped me to kind of take myself out of those situations that used to cause me or used to kind of get me experiencing stress or anger. So every time something happens, it's just going to that mentality where it's like everything happens for a reason. It is what it is. No judging it. It's just observing it and then just letting it go. And that's what's helped me massively to, well, keep myself in a more relaxed state. And then the only times I feel my anger coming up now is when I'm hungry. And then I just feed myself and I'm sorted. But living in that state of neutrality where everything is as it is, it's like there's no judging it, don't try to understand it. It's happened. It is what it is. Now your choice is, what do I do going forward? Just move on, let it go, and just keep being the person I want to be. And that's helped me massively over the last few years of kind of getting rid of unhealthy stress for good for me.
Yeah, thank you. That's really powerful. And just to echo and piggyback off that, it's kind of, once you start to become aware of the way you behave and the way you react and the way you're triggered, you can then start to get ahead of it, really. So you know what could happen. So how can you prepare better? How can you take care of yourself better for future events, the ones that you're familiar with? I can't really change the layout of my job or the way they want us to work. So how can I better facilitate that? You know, I wouldn't be affected by that as much if, for example, I was working in the daytime and not working at 4 a.m. Can't change that. I'm working nights. Well, I can, obviously I can switch to days, but you see what I mean? So if I'm not willing to change the situation like that, then at least I can do is get more sleep, have a good, healthy, nourishing meal before my shift, and put my body in a better place to be able to have yeah, you're making me think about the word tolerance now, Charlotte. You said that. Try to think of a different word, but to cultivate the sense of steadiness. I think you can get ahead of the game. Probably isn't the right term, but you get what I'm saying. Just plan for the match before it takes place. Makes all the difference. Though, as we know, in any form of sport, the match report plan could go out the window as soon as it starts. But the point's still valid. Anyway, I'm rambling on, so let's focus on what we're talking about here. I just want to thank you so much for all of that. I thought it was amazing, and I'm really hoping this is encouraging people to maybe want to reach out to you guys. So guys, let's jump into the 4-phase human blueprint. When I first looked at your website and checked out what you guys were up to, I thought, this looks interesting. And then you mentioned you'd like to talk about this. I thought, yeah, let's do it, because I deliberately didn't look at it too much. I want you to shock me and awe me right now. So tell me more. Let's do it.
All right, so the 4-phase human blueprint came about really because what we was noticing is so many people were coming to us almost having done patchwork in their lives. And to make that clearer, just imagine like you're spinning plates, right? You're spinning all these plates. You've got a plate for your family, you've got a plate for your career, you've got a plate for your health, and you're spinning in all these different areas of your life, and you're literally just trying to keep everything balancing. Right. And sometimes, that gets very stressful for people. Right. And it's something that it's life. It happens. But what we've noticed is that when sometimes the spinning plate of relationships either slows down or falls off or smashes, that's when suddenly we get this spike of stress. And when we get this spike of stress, then all of our focus goes into that part of our lives, right? It's like, okay, well, I've got work is spinning nicely, health is spinning nicely, all the other areas except relationships. So then it's like, okay, I've got to go all in and now try and fix my relationship, and whether that's communication, whether that's deciding if the relationship continues or discontinues, it really doesn't matter. But the idea here is that people are trying to patchwork. They're trying to then fix one part of their life while everything else is still going. And then they fix that, and then, okay, great, relationships are going well again. Now health needs my attention. Now I want to lose weight. Now I want to gain weight. Now I'm feeling sick. Now I'm feeling too stressed. Now I'm feeling tired. And then now we're focusing on this plate. And there's always this divided attention going to all these areas of our lives. And ultimately, when we're trying to patchwork like that, we are really playing on the surface level. We're really just trying to literally put a band-aid over a bullet wound. We're trying to fix things that we can see and that are tangible. And that's all well and good, because sometimes, like we say, that's enough. Maybe you do need to just alter where you're putting your energy at different times of life. That's okay, that's natural. But what we find is the people that keep on dropping plates, or the plates that spinning too fast or too slow, things aren't happening quick enough, or they're happening too slow, or happening too fast and it's overwhelming. These people are realizing it's happening over and over and over again. And ultimately the 4 phase human blueprints help us to work on a deeper level. It's about us, okay, let's just keep those plates spinning as best we can whilst we look under the surface. Let's have a look and see what's happening on a much deeper level within you as an individual, with the things that you can control. Let's make sure that we can actually start to look at this in a methodical way, so that you feel like all of those plates are just spinning in a beautiful way, where you can actually sit back and enjoy them and you can enjoy those experiences in those areas of life. So that's where the 4 phase human blueprint was kind of born, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And obviously out of those 4 phases, we keep them as simple and to the point as possible. So we have obviously discovery as phase 1, then we've got reset phase 2, alignment phase 3, and future proof as phase 4. And each phase we mapped out as 3 months each. Obviously that can change and alter depending on the person and where their focus and their energy needs to go for what they're trying to achieve. But ultimately, we always start with discovery. That's our phase 1. So we need to actually observe and understand what's going on in our client's life, in every area of their life. So this is when we start to explore kind of the psychology, the emotional, the energetic, the physical well-being of the client, and see kind of what's going on, observe what's happening, what they're doing. Look at accessing any presenting issues that are arising during that observation period, looking at lifestyle factors like we've already discussed, how they're breathing, how they're sleeping, how they're eating, how they're moving, all these different things. We just want to see, okay, how are they actually performing in these areas, and actually are they connecting them or not? Are they separate? Are they seeing them as separate? Also, at this point, we also like to, in the discovery phase, to kind of deep dive into someone's personal history, because as we've spoken about, someone's conditioning, we need to know what's happened in their past and their personal history. Look at old patterns that they're falling into that may be kind of like the root cause to what's happening currently in their life. Also looking at our holistic health check as well, something we call the Magic 8. So it's the 8 foundations, the 8 fundamentals of the life that if everyone just kind of focuses on and gets into balance on a daily basis, everything just works. It works in alignment, it works congruently together, and it's just easy at that point. And then we obviously look at full life assessment as well. The hope is not just them working with us for one specific goal. It's actually looking at how can we incorporate and how can we connect every single area of the life to come towards to a more balanced state. Once we observe these areas and we know what's going on and what they're doing, it's easier for us then to be able to step onto phase 2, which is the reset phase.
Yeah, and the reset is when we are looking at almost recalibrating the system as beings, if you like. It's about us making sure that now we've got all that awareness and we know what's happening, we can start to identify our own patterns and where maybe we've got some blind spots and where we can actually build upon them. We can actually start to reset our belief systems and our inner programming, unlock our intrinsic motivations as well. At this point, we upgrade habits that kind of work. We integrate the conscious and the subconscious so that actually we're working in alignment. Like John said at the very beginning, is like building that trust with oneself, so we can let go of the limiting thoughts or behaviors that actually are causing distrust sometimes within us, and so that we can create that heart-mind coherence. So we basically hit reset at this point. And John mentioned there is that quite often people spend like a few months in each of these different phases, but it really depends on the person when they come to us. The results begin in the beginning. As much as this is the reset phase, the minute we start exploring and bringing all of this into our awareness, the resetting has already begun. It's just when we get to that reset phase specifically, that's when we start to really dive in, and somebody's really immersed then and they're feeling their experiences of having those things in their awareness.
Definitely. And then we come on to phase 3 at this point, which is alignment. So at this point, it's just basically getting everything internally, externally into alignment with exactly what it is they want, and making sure they're completely aware and understand what that is. So it's helping to access kind of their true fulfillment and working on internal, external clarity and coherence. So basically what's going on the inside reflects what's going on the outside and vice versa. Also looking at what's like identity alignment. So we've spoken about this in previous questions about people identifying with certain areas, of like people who go, I'm a stressed person, is they always identify with being stressed, when stress is not an identity, it's an experience. So it's during this phase is aligning them with who they want to be and their identity. Also leveraging any unique lifestyle factors. So this is again going back into the nutrition, into the movement, the breath, every aspect of their life, their relationships, and then starting to kind of leveraging and aligning every area so it connects together. So obviously for the alignment is just an understanding around the metaphysical kind of wellness side of it. So it's not just all about the physical, but we're focusing on metaphysical as well. It's about that life force energy and what they can actually do with it. Once that life force energy is aligned with exactly what they want, then they can whatever they want to achieve, whatever goal they've got, just becomes much more effortless to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously finally then we've got the future proofing. So basically by the time they've done all of that kind of work and they put all of that time and effort into their own transformation, it's about then how we executing new standards. It's about having those deep sense of knowing, okay, what are your non-negotiables? What is your go-to tool where if you are in a stressful situation you can't control? What happens if you start to notice any unhealthy stress? How do you determine what is unhealthy, what is healthy in their life? Not generally speaking, but to them specifically in certain situations that might be a challenge for them. And then lastly, it's really like just making sure that we're future pacing and making sure that they've got a full roadmap for their future in all of those areas, like those spinning plates that we mentioned, is they know which one should be spinning at what pace. They know what colour that plate should be. They know why they're spinning it in the first place. And then obviously part of that is, you know, we help people with their unique goals, whatever it is they set out for at the beginning, which we will be helping them parallel with all of this work. And that for some people that can be high performance, for some people it is about leveraging their health for something specific, some specific goals they've got. We often also help like coaches that are upcoming as well in the online space, like coachpreneurship we call it. We help them with that as well as we start to future proof so that they know where they're headed, because like we said, there's those three things that one needs to be able to do. One of them is to take action towards what we want, because if we're not moving forwards, we're either stuck or we're moving backwards. And it's not nature to be stuck or move backwards, right? It's our nature as human beings to be moving forwards, being present, but knowing we're moving somewhere. Doesn't matter what the thing is and where it is you're headed, so long as it's something that's serving you and the people you care about, then ultimately that's the 4-phase human blueprint that they'll use to get there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And it's kind of lovely packaged up everything we discussed today in which is lovely. I mean, I think it's so important for people to have these tools, and it's really given me food for thought in my career going forward. But what I really like about what you've done there and where you've laid all that out is we talked earlier on about being resourced, right? Being resourceful, having the inner resources we need that we can tap into at any time for any situation that we're in. I think what you've done is really lovely, because it's certainly doing that. It's resourcing them with everything they need. So when they move on from working with you guys, you know that you can have the faith that they are in a place that they can always integrate everything that you taught them along the way, and they've brought into their own sort of sense of awareness. And that's what I think is so important about today's conversation, is about resourcing ourselves for that. So am I getting that right? Is that a good way to think about this too?
Yes, definitely. And the whole point is when they leave us, when we finish that, wrap up that coaching, we're always going to be there for them. But the whole point is they have everything they need. So they've got the skills, they've got the knowledge, they've got the experience, they've gone through the work, they've done the work, they've got all the tools they need to live the life they want for the rest of their life. They don't need anything else, and that's kind of the goal. We don't want them coming back to us and go, "Oh, I need to do another round of coaching with you." It's not the point. We want to lead them so they then lead the life they want, and they can help others along the way. But that's it. They have everything they need. They've got all the resources they need. They don't need anything else. They just need to trust in themselves.
It's so funny when we speak to obviously like new people that have never worked with us before. We say to them, "Hey, listen, we we want to obviously get you from A to B, what you've actually achieved, but then you're good. Like, you're good to go. You're good to run with it. You're always going to have us and our community, absolutely, to support you along the way, and that accountability element. But sometimes they find it really hard to believe that they could possibly have all the resources that they need for themselves. Sometimes immediately, just in that initial conversation, it opens people up to understanding, yeah, do you know, you've got this. It's just about now having that guidance to be able to integrate it and bring it into your awareness in the way that it needs to be for this phase of your life. And the blueprints obviously helped us to get some incredible results with our clients, but integration is definitely probably the best word you could have picked to sum that up.
Yeah, that's lovely. And, you know, something that we often talk about on the show is, when it comes to resourcefulness, is, you know, when I reflect back on the things that happened to me, and some of my clients have echoed this, clients, guests, we talk about, you know, we did the best we could with the resources we had. So I've loved this, guys. This has been amazing. So before we go, what does the future look like for you two? What's the plan? Is there any big dreams, but also remaining present, of course?
Well, yeah, we technically, like, literally, like, this week we should have been relocating to Thailand. That was kind of our thing, is like kind of where we're headed next. Obviously, with the pandemic, we're sticking around for a little bit longer, but our plan is, when we get to Thailand, is we are going to be hosting some immersive experiences where we guide groups through the full face human blueprint, where they'll leave that immersive experience and be able to almost unplug from their lives, come back after that immersive experience and plug back in, and just be so resourcefully grounded that they'll know exactly what needs to happen moving forwards to realign them, to get them going forwards.
Also, one thing we're looking at is just to be kind of onboarding other experts that are kind of relevant to what we do, to become obviously part of wellness theory. So those experts can deep dive into different areas that we cover with clients, with those groups and those immersive experiences, whether it's with our coaching program. And the whole point is just to help reach more people and just to be able to give more. And that's the thing with the both of us. We're limited on, in terms of time with clients. So when we get to that point where we're at capacity, we want to bring people on where that can help us and that share our vision, our message, really, to help others.
Before we go, this is your finale message to the audience. So in regards to self-awareness and present moment, in regards to stress and such like, what would be your parting message for anybody listening that's looking to feel more steady?
I would say, for me, my message would be for people to stop listening to all the noise out there. There's so much information, so much conflicting information out there, so much people telling you do this, or no, don't do this, do that. Stop listening to all that noise. Just trust in your own ability to figure it out. Once you can connect with yourself more, and you can start trusting yourself, then when you do seek help, or you do need to fill in those gaps you're missing, you know kind of where to go, or you know what questions to ask to get the result that you want. So I would definitely say that start listening to the noise and start to believe and trust in your own abilities to be able to handle things.
Nice. So yeah, in regards to self-awareness and present moment awareness, I think a great starting point for anyone is to consider who you are when you're not being aware and being present, and really check in with yourself and feel whether you are really happy with that or not. What's the quality of your life like? What's the experience you're having? Is life flowing effortlessly, or is life an effort? Is life something that you're almost resisting? Because I would definitely put my money on the more aware and more present you are, the easier things flow for you, the better life quality you experience. We've seen that personally, we've seen it professionally as well. And I think just considering who you are when you're not being aware or present is a fantastic starting point for anybody listening.
So thank you so much. This was amazing. My first time interviewing a duo. I've really enjoyed it. And it's always really tricky to make these episodes short because there's 3 of us. So I know that from the panel shows. The panel shows like 2.5 hours long minimum. And there's 4 of us, so it's intense. But I've loved this. I want to try and do more of this duo stuff. It's really fun. So what is the best way for people to check you out, find out more about you, and get in touch?
Well, got a few different ways. We got an email, info@thewellnesstheory.com, so people can reach out to us. We also have Instagram @wellnesstheory. So that's when active on Instagram, obviously always replying to messages. Same on Facebook as well, @wellnesstheory on Facebook. Where else we got? YouTube?
The website, yeah.
Everywhere,
YouTube
the
website.
website.
The website is thewellnesstheory.com.
We can check out everything that we do, all about our 4-phase human blueprint, who we are, what we do, and everything that we offer.
Amazing. I put all the links in the show notes as always. I encourage people to come and check out your Instagram because that's where I spend most of my time. But I love the videos that you do. I think it's really cool. It's really interesting. Your branding's great. The message is really pure and authentic. So guys, go and check it out. It's really cool. Obviously, you've got your podcast, right? So is that of the same name, so people know?
Yep, exactly the same name. So Wellness Theory, just search it, you'll see us pop up.
Cool. And is your podcast, like you mentioned before, so there's sometimes it's you guys, sometimes there's guests and there's short snippets. Is that right?
Yeah, so we have pieces where it's just us as a duo on there talking all things stress and wellness. We have episodes on there where we invite our clients on and they tell firsthand what their experiences have been like. So again, people hear real people and what they're going through, they're very, very powerful episodes. And then we have guest experts on the show as well. And we're looking forward to having you on there as well very soon.
Thanks. I won't put myself in an expert category, but when I train, maybe so. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. I really love this, and just keep up the amazing work. I think you guys are awesome.
Thank you for having us. It's been awesome to be on here, and we're excited to watch you flourish with your podcast even more as well.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll be back next time for another beautiful, insightful chat. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope it has been of value. We have new shows every Sunday and Wednesday, including our panel shows every 4 weeks. If you have enjoyed the podcast so far, I would be so grateful if you could leave a rating and a review on whichever platform you listen on. If you could also follow us on these platforms, then that would really help more people find this podcast. Your support means the world to me. We also have wellness videos over on our YouTube channel. There are also longer form videos, meditations, and visualizations. If you're intrigued to discover more about becoming more self-aware and how you can live a life with more resilience, self-compassion, and joy, then check out Living Heart Wisdom with Carla Jo Garrity. If you're in need of support, please do check out the helplines and website resources listed on the show notes of this episode. For more on us generally and what we're doing, visit www.theawareness-space.com. Thank you for being with us, and I will be back soon. It is time to experience the awareness space within.